Maurice Scott's words brought attention to a problem that many people often avoid talking about, especially when it happens inside a marriage during a health crisis. What made this situation so troubling was not just the topic itself, but the timing, the tone, and the lack of awareness shown while Kimmi was dealing with cancer treatment. When a partner is fighting a life-threatening illness, every conversation changes meaning. Every word carries more weight. In moments like that, care and sensitivity are not optional, they are necessary. The concern did not come from a single sentence alone, it came from the overall message that was delivered. Maurice spoke about intimacy in a way that centered his needs, while Kimmi was physically weak, emotionally exhausted, and facing uncertainty about her health. Cancer treatment is not just tiring, it affects the body, the mind, and a person's sense of self. Chemotherapy changes how someone feels in their own skin. Expecting normalcy and intimacy during that time requires deep understanding and patience. What many viewers reacted to was how casually Maurice spoke about sex, as if it were a solution to stress or bad moods. Statements like that may sound harmless in everyday situations, but during illness, they take on a different meaning. They suggest that emotional or physical discomfort can be fixed through intimacy, even when the partner is not in a place to give or receive it fully. That framing removes empathy from the conversation. Kimmi was very clear that Maurice did not force her. She also made it clear that she chose to continue intimacy because it was still part of how she viewed her marriage. Those statements are important and should not be ignored. At the same time, choice does not always mean freedom from pressure. Pressure can exist quietly. It can exist through expectations, through repeated conversations, and through the feeling that you must keep things normal to keep peace. One of the most painful moments in this entire situation was when Kimmi admitted that she had been faking orgasms. That confession alone should have stopped the conversation in its tracks. It was a moment that required care, reflection, and concern. When someone admits they are enduring intimacy rather than enjoying it, that is not a small detail. That is a sign that something is wrong. Instead of shifting immediately to empathy, the response leaned towards surprise and explanation. Maurice seemed focused on how he felt hearing that information, rather than what it meant for Kimmi. That reaction is what caused many viewers to feel uncomfortable. In moments like that, the injured person's experience should be centered, not the other person's shock or ego. Maurice repeatedly asked for context, but context should not be used to soften harm. Context does not remove responsibility. If anything, context made the situation more serious. Knowing that Kimmi was undergoing cancer treatment should have already placed limits on expectations. The responsibility should not have been on Kimmi to explain her pain in detail to receive understanding. Another issue that raised concern was the way sex was described as a need instead of a want. Language matters. When intimacy is framed as a requirement regardless of circumstances, it creates a sense of obligation. Relationships are built on mutual care, not fixed demands. During illness, priorities change. Survival becomes the focus. Comfort becomes the focus. Emotional safety becomes the focus. The comparisons made between sex and household duties were especially troubling for many people. That kind of thinking reduces intimacy to a task instead of a shared connection. When intimacy becomes something a person feels they must perform, it loses its meaning. It becomes draining instead of bonding. That reality is why so many people reacted strongly. Kimmi's behavior throughout the discussion showed how much she was trying to protect her husband. She corrected headlines, defended his character, and repeatedly clarified that he did not threaten or force her. While that defense came from love, it also raised questions. Why did she feel responsible for managing the situation while still dealing with cancer? Why did the burden of explanation fall on her? At times, it felt like Kimmi was carrying both her own pain and the responsibility of making Maurice look better publicly. That imbalance is what many people found heartbreaking. Support should flow toward the person who is suffering, not away from them. Maurice did acknowledge that his words were poorly chosen. However, acknowledgement alone is not enough. Saying you would change your wording in the future does not heal the present moment. Viewers were looking for a clear statement that placed Kimmi's comfort, dignity, and health above everything else. That moment never fully came. When conversations like this happen on public platforms, the responsibility increases. Television does not forget. Clips live forever. Words are replayed, analyzed, and shared. When Kimmi expressed feeling unprotected by the language used, that should have been treated as a serious emotional concern, not something to explain away. Another pattern that stood out was how quickly the conversation returned to Maurice's feelings. His shock, his perspective, his reaction to the backlash became central. While his emotions matter, they should not have taken over a discussion that began because of Kimmi's suffering. True accountability requires stepping back. It requires allowing the person who was affected to remain the focus. It requires listening without defending. It requires understanding that intent does not erase impact. The public reaction did not come from nowhere. Many people recognized patterns they had lived through themselves. Women who have been sick, pregnant, grieving, or exhausted saw something familiar. The expectation to continue giving even when you are empty is not new. Seeing it discussed so openly triggered strong emotions. That does not mean every reaction was fair or respectful, but it explains why the response was intense. This was not just about one couple. It was about a shared experience many people rarely feel safe discussing. Kimmi showed incredible strength throughout this situation. Fighting cancer while dealing with public scrutiny and marital tension is not easy. Her honesty about her body and her experience deserves respect. At the same time, strength should not be confused with obligation. Being strong does not mean you must endure discomfort to keep others comfortable. This situation highlights how important empathy is in relationships. Empathy is not just knowing facts, it's responding to pain with care. When empathy is delayed or missing, even explanations sound cold. Maurice wanted to be understood. That desire is human. But understanding must go both ways. When one partner feels exposed or hurt, that feeling must take priority over defending intent. The conversation also opens a larger discussion about intimacy during illness. There is no single rule that fits every marriage. Every couple is different. But respect, consent, and compassion must always guide decisions. No one should feel pressured to push past their limits to maintain stability. Kimmi clarified that sex did not physically hurt her, but emotional strain is real too. Feeling disconnected from your body while trying to meet expectations can leave lasting emotional effects. That reality deserves acknowledgement without minimization. As the discussion continued, it became clear that Maurice struggled to fully step outside his own point of view. Even when given opportunities to rephrase, he returned to explanations. This pattern made it seem like Kimmi was carrying more emotional weight. Public accountability is uncomfortable, but it can be a moment for growth. Growth requires listening more than speaking. It requires accepting that harm can exist without bad intent. It requires choosing your partner's well-being over your image. At its core, this situation is about how relationships are tested during crisis. Cancer changes everything. It changes bodies, priorities, energy, and emotional balance. Any marriage facing that must adapt with patience and humility. The lasting lesson here is that love shows itself most clearly during hardship. Words spoken during those moments reveal values. When those words fall short, they must be replaced with actions that heal. This conversation matters because it reflects real lives. It reminds people that intimacy should never come at the cost of dignity. Love should never require suffering as proof, and illness should never turn compassion into something that must be negotiated. Kimmi deserves protection in every sense, especially while fighting for her health. Protection is physical, emotional, and verbal. When a partner says they felt unprotected, that should never become a debate. This situation serves as a reminder that empathy is not optional in love. It is the foundation. Without it, even good intentions can cause harm. Another important part of this situation is how illness changes power dynamics inside a relationship. When one partner is healthy and the other is not, even normal conversations can feel unbalanced. The healthy partner often does not realize how much influence their words carry. Suggestions can feel like expectations. Questions can feel like pressure. Silence can feel like disappointment. None of this requires bad intent to exist. It simply happens when vulnerability enters the relationship. Kimmi was in a deeply vulnerable state. Her body was going through changes she did not choose. Her energy was limited. Her emotions were already stretched thin by fear, treatment, and uncertainty. In that space, trying to maintain a sense of normal marriage life can feel like a responsibility rather than a desire. That emotional weight is not always visible, but it is real. Many people watching noticed how often Kimmi spoke in a careful way. She chose her words slowly. She explained herself clearly. She tried to make sure Maurice was not misunderstood. That level of care shows how much she values the relationship, but it also shows how much emotional labor she was doing while already carrying so much. Emotional labor is often invisible, especially to the person who is being protected by it. Explaining, softening, defending, and reassuring all take energy. When someone is sick, that energy is already in short supply. Having to use it to manage a situation created by your partner's words adds another layer of exhaustion. Maurice's focus on being misunderstood revealed a common reaction when criticism feels overwhelming. Instead of fully sitting with the harm caused, the instinct is to explain, to correct, to defend. While this reaction is human, it can block growth if it becomes the main response. Understanding why something hurt someone matters more than explaining why it was said. When Kimmi shared that she felt unprotected, that was a key moment. Feeling unprotected by your spouse, especially during illness, is deeply painful. Protection in a marriage does not only mean physical safety, it means speaking in ways that preserve dignity. It means anticipating vulnerability and responding with care. The absence of a clear, direct statement centered on Kimmi's comfort left many viewers unsettled. People were not looking for perfection, they were looking for empathy. A simple acknowledgement that her health should have come before any expectations would have gone a long way. This situation also highlighted how public conversations can distort private realities. Some things are better handled off-camera, where honesty does not feel like exposure. Once personal struggles are discussed publicly, they become subject to interpretation, judgment, and opinion. That environment makes healing harder, not easier. Kimmi's honesty was brave, but bravery should never be required for basic understanding. A partner should not need to explain their pain in detail to be met with compassion. Compassion should come first. The discussion also revealed how deeply ingrained ideas about marital duty still are. Even today, many people grow up believing that certain roles must be maintained no matter the circumstances. Illness challenges those beliefs. It forces couples to rethink what partnership truly means. Partnership during crisis is about flexibility. It is about adjusting expectations. It is about recognizing that love sometimes looks like patience instead of intimacy, presence instead of performance, and care instead of consistency. What many people found upsetting was not just what was said, but what was missing. The missing pause, the missing concern, the missing shift toward Kimmi's emotional safety. Silence in those moments would have spoken louder than explanations. This situation also shows how easily a person's pain can be overshadowed by public reaction. Once the backlash began, the focus shifted to damage control. Conversations became about headlines, comments, and interpretations. Meanwhile, the original issue remained unresolved. Public criticism can be harsh, but it often reflects a deeper discomfort with familiar patterns. Many viewers were reacting to their own experiences. Seeing a woman navigate illness while still feeling responsible for her partner's needs struck a nerve. That does not make every reaction right, but it makes the conversation necessary. These are not rare experiences, they are just rarely discussed openly. Kimmi's continued grace does not erase the need for accountability. grace and accountability can exist together. Protecting your partner publicly does not mean the situation was harmless. It means the partner is choosing love over conflict. Maurice's acknowledgement that he would choose his words differently in the future suggests awareness, but awareness is only the first step. Change is shown through action. Change looks like listening without interruption. Change looks like centering your partner's experience. Change looks like silence when silence is needed. The broader lesson here is about how couples communicate during vulnerability. Language matters. Timing matters. Awareness matters. When someone is fighting for their life, every expectation should be re-examined. Intimacy is not owed, it is shared. And when sharing becomes painful or empty for one partner, it must be paused, not pushed through. This situation also reminds us that strength should never be taken advantage of. Kimmi's resilience is admirable, but resilience should not become a reason to place more weight on her shoulders. Love during illness is tested in quiet moments, not public statements. It is tested in how needs are adjusted, how space is given, and how comfort is prioritized. At the heart of this conversation is a simple truth. Empathy should not have to be requested. It should be automatic, especially in moments of sickness. Whether Maurice intended harm or not, the impact of his words mattered. Impact is what stays with the person who lived through it. Impact is what viewers responded to. Impact is what must be addressed. This situation offers an opportunity for reflection, not just for one couple, but for anyone in a relationship. It invites people to ask themselves how they show care when their partner is vulnerable. It challenges old beliefs about obligation and reminds us that love must adapt when life changes. In the end, this is not about attacking or defending. It is about understanding. Understanding how words can hurt even when love exists. Understanding how illness shifts everything. Understanding that dignity should never be compromised for the sake of maintaining appearances. Kimmi deserves rest, peace, and protection as she continues her healing journey. That protection must come from the person closest to her before it comes from anyone else. And the most important takeaway from this entire situation is this: real love listens first. Real love adjusts. Real love protects without being asked.